Chapter 30. En route to the London docks, England. Tuesday, 7:14 a.m., 1695. The gulls wheeled and screeched overhead, diving and dipping into the shimmering waves, the morning sun just breaking through the gray clouds. Quite a few lice-ridden looky-loos scratched and stared as the prison cart trundled through the thick morning mist to the shipyard docks. Crowded with women, it was an unusual sight, eliciting catcalls from the men and judgmental snickers from the women. Some of the unfortunates stood, clinging to the bars of the paddy wagon, jostled by the uneven cobbled streets, shouting entreaties and insults to the interested bystanders. "You're lucky," a fellow detainee at the prison slurred after Marci's arrival, her one good eye focused somewhere over her shoulder, poking at her own concave stomach. "A healthy one, eh? You'll be sold." Marci was told later the woman was a slattern and couldn't be trusted. When Marci was carted to prison, she was searched, deloused, a process she was certain resulted in her actual lousing, and deserted in a common crowded cell, already overstuffed with a variety of female criminals in various stages of hygienic neglect, where she was rid of her young men's wear and given a thin, scratchy servant's dress with sleeves that tied to the bodice. "Just do as they tells ya," they'd said. "Does ya no goods to fight 'em," they'd said. "Sign here," they'd said. "Make an X if you can't write," they'd directed. "Sold?" Marci repeated in disbelief when they'd loaded her into a cart with a dozen other women one crisp morning days later. "To the colonies, my dearie. A bondswoman." A woman calling herself the Duchess explained cheerfully, collapsing upon the better part of the lone bench behind her, leaving the others to stand and hold the bars along the top and sides of the wagon. "I hear 'tis 7 years of hard labor, but then you're free as a bird, love." How was Marci to understand what she'd signed? "Paint a picture, it'll last longer," she shouted angrily to a spectator. The way-faced receptor of this insult looked bewildered as the cart moved past him, a slow drizzle of dew dripping from the undercarriage. The horses slowed with a whinny as the stone-faced driver pulled back on their reins, jumping down to hitch them to a post on the quay. The stringy bailiff leapt down from the passenger seat, strutting around to the back of the cart, where he slowly pulled out his ring of keys and opened the iron door, drawling, "Ladies, if you'd please stand up," while yanking cruelly on the chain that bound the women together by their ankle fetters. A stern-looking, white-haired gentleman, sporting a clean navy suit, met the bailiff on the dock, handing over a parcel full of coins, and, with a sarcastic bow, was presented with a stack of receipts for his bills of sale. In the Americas, Captain Maddox would make a fine profit from the auction of the women's indentured papers, having made this voyage 9 times prior, while boasting of a loss rate of less than 40%. With a flick of his wrist, Captain Maddox signaled the crew, who climbed into the riggings and danced about the deck in organized chaos, readying the ship to sail. 2 menacing sailors appeared at the captain's side, and after a quick word with the master of the ship, approached the chained, sullen dozen on the dock. Following a terse disagreement in French, followed by something resembling rock, paper, scissors, a fierce-looking Moroccan with a bushy beard crawling into a caterpillar-like unibrow approached the women with a frown. Aaron had lived the majority of his adulthood at sea with the belief that women aboard ship was bad luck for all. One woman, bad enough, he thought, spitting near one startled prisoner's slippered foot. 12 women, 'twas a nightmare. "Hello, love. My name is Kit." A saucy redhead winked as the second sailor knelt down to remove the chain binding the women's ankles, leaving their wrists shackled. Kit Kildare, a gangly reed of a woman with a head of vibrant orange curls and a non-existent bust, was, as oft stated, an unrepentant whore. One of the only actual sluts to make it aboard, contrary to popular belief, and had been selling her goods by the docks for almost 15 years. somehow amazingly unaffected by her lot in life, and still remarkably pox-free. Unlike most of the women here, Kit looked upon this transfer to the Americas as a grand adventure, assured in the knowledge she could ply her trade in any port in the world. "Come with me, yes," the giant Moroccan requested softly, gesturing to a gangplank crowded with sailors hurriedly outfitting the merchant ship with final provisions. The ladies in sync clanged carefully across the planking to the boat to be hoisted over the deck rail by a stout sailor, one by one, except for the Duchess, wheezing dramatically, who required 2 additional deckhands to accommodate her noble girth. Once loaded and led to the upper deck, Captain Maddox marched imperiously in front of the women, inspecting them with a fixed, blank expression meant to intimidate. Marci knew the type well. She'd reported to some version of this entitled, ridiculous little man in her old life at every job she'd ever held. His name usually something like Mark, Michael, or Kevin. When the captain finished his haughty surveillance, he spoke in rapid, clipped English, carefully enunciating each word. "You will be unbound once we are underway. Because you have nowhere to go at sea, your only option is to obey me and follow my rules. If you do so, you will be fed. You will stay away from the crew, sluts that you are, and keep to yourself and the chores I assign you. If you refuse to work, you will be beaten." He delicately dabbed his nose with a kerchief, methodically folding it and placing it in his breast pocket, as most of the women, and some of the crew, lowered their eyes in deference. Marci, however, stared boldly back at him, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line, while holding his direct gaze for a tense number of seconds before he dropped his own eyes, frowning and disconcerted, and stalked away barking orders. Arun motioned for the women to follow him below deck to their quarters, where they would spend the majority of the next long months. He silently pointed the way, allowing the prisoners to file inside the hold before unlocking their shackles and wordlessly shutting the oak door with a clunk and the distinctive click of a lock. The room wasn't very dissimilar to the women's previous quarters at the North Abbey Women's Reform. A small, crowded space populated by scratchy hay ticks on the floor, a few pots for their biologic needs, and a barrel of tepid, tinny water. The Duchess lowered herself regally to the nearest pallet, fanning her face furiously. "And to think I used to have my own carriage, and a servant, to be brought to this. 'Tis a right shame at me age," she gasped. "I think Captain Maddox is a right sexy beast, though, eh?" Kit added dreamily, fanning her chest. Marci wrinkled her nose in obvious distaste. "Well then, you got an opinion on something, do ya?" Kit goaded her. "Yeah, Kit, I do," Marci confessed with an exasperated sigh, finally losing her patience for this entire affair, wanting so badly to ask to speak to a manager. "I think he's an asshole. And I know assholes. They're bigger in Texas, so I've already got this one's number. The bigger the ego, the smaller the man, if you know what I mean, and I believe you do." The others seemed stunned by Marci's sudden transformation, her initial silence having been mistaken for snobbery by the others, and a byproduct of her Frenchified ways. "An asshole, is he? The mouth on her," Kit murmured appreciatively as the others tittered. "I like a woman that speaks her mind." The boat shifted, groaning as it was pushed away from the dock, the sounds of industry ringing out from the deck overhead, the stomps and shouts of sailors rushing to their posts, signaling the start of an arduous and unpredictable adventure ahead. Everyone fell quiet before one slight chatterbox spoke up from her cot, filling the maudlin silence. "Well now, seems like we got some time. Anyone got any good stories?"